So thank you for joining us today for our workshop from our nutritional sciences students, Alexa, Jaisa, and Emily. They will be covering artificial sweeteners versus sugar. I would say a pretty hot topic for a lot of us of trying to figure those out, navigate through this. Just nutrition in general can be a little overwhelming for some of us to really navigate through. So really looking forward to what they have to share with us today to help us understand artificial sweeteners and sugar overall just a little bit better. So thank you very much. If you guys have questions, please feel free to put those in the chat and I'll help the ladies navigate through those throughout the presentation as well. So thank you very much, and ladies, go right ahead.
My name is Emily, and I'll be speaking with you guys first. As mentioned, we will be discussing sugars versus sweeteners today as we go through and hopefully be able to decipher some of what all of that would mean. Oh, did I skip? All right. So we have a couple objectives for you guys today. The first one is to know where to find added sugars on a food label. The second one would be to be able to identify characteristics of nutritive versus non-nutritive sweeteners. And then lastly, to be able to identify the recommendations for sugar intake as according to the American Heart Association. We've also provided a brief overview of how today will be structured. So we'll start out with a pre-activity, move on to natural sugars and added sugars, followed by nutritive versus non-nutritive sweeteners, those recommendations, and then follow up with a post-activity. All right, so to start off, if you guys could please pull out a smartphone and go ahead and scan this QR code to take our pre-activity quiz. We'll give you guys about 5 minutes to kind of do this. It's just a real quick short quiz to just kind of see where you're at right now with your knowledge on sugar and sweeteners. If you guys aren't able to get it or have any issues, please go ahead and shoot us a message in the chat as well. Thank you. All right. Thank you guys so much for doing that for us and bearing with us again. All right. So we're going to start off with a little bit about what we do know about sugar and added sugars. And what we do know is there is a gap. As mentioned, there does seem to be some confusion surrounding sugars, added sugars, and sweeteners, and whether or not one is better than the other. What is the recommendation? Is one healthy? And so what we also know is that these are actually found in a lot of our foods and beverages. Dr. Popkin's research found that 74% of products in the US supply chain actually have some type of natural added or sweetener in them, which is quite a bit of our food supply. So Americans also are very fond of sugar, as we know. I'm definitely one that has a sweet tooth. So but apparently Americans can consume anywhere from 17 to 22 teaspoons of sugar a day, despite 77% striving to consume less sugar in their diets. So today we're hoping to be able to provide you guys with some information in order to better assess what types of foods and beverages may include these. To start off with, we're going to look into a couple definitions. So starting with natural sugars, this is just a sugar that is found naturally in food. We don't add it into anything. It is just grown that way. And a couple common sources would be found in milk and fruit. Added sugars are added to the food that's not naturally there already. And this is typically added through processing by adding either like a table sugar or some type of syrup, such as high fructose corn syrup. And so the best way to kind of see where these are in our foods is by assessing the nutrition labels on the back of our products. And so the Dietary Guidelines of America have actually made this mandatory. So you should be finding these on all of your food products. It went into effect on January of 2021. So you'll locate your sugars underneath the carbohydrate section of your food tab, and your total sugars are indicated by the blue 1 on our screen. And then underneath that is the added sugar for that product, denoted by the orange 2. And so those total sugars already include that added sugar in the amount. And so that's just something to be mindful of whenever you're reading that. You don't have to do any extra math. Which is great. Saves us some more time. And Then as well, you can see that there's the grams and the percent daily values on these tabs or on these nutrition fact labels. So the FDA actually denotes foods that are 5% or less of your daily value as a food source that has a low added sugar source. And then if it is 20% or greater of your daily value, the FDA identifies that food as more of a high source of added sugars. So this is just another image for us to use whenever we are looking for foods in our grocery stores, convenience stores. We're in line grabbing a quick snack. So sources that are typically high in added sugar tend to be our sugar sweetened beverages, coming in at number one. As you can see, that large white section, they account for 47% of products that have added sugar to them, with the three most prominent ones being soft drinks, fruit drinks, coffee and tea, but then there's also quite a bit in sports and energy drinks. So for example, I wanted to provide you guys with some more numbers. But in a 12-ounce Coke, there are 39 grams of added sugar, which is equivalent to about 78% of the daily value. And for maybe a 20-ounce Gatorade after you did a workout or something, that would have 34 grams of added sugar, with approximately 69% of your daily value from added sugar. Coming in second was the snacks and sweets, which I think for most of us, you would expect sweets to have sugar in them. They're sweet for a reason. But something that people may not think about is snacks having additional added sugar in them. So for instance, if you consume maybe like a Yoplait strawberry yogurt, those actually have 17 grams of added sugar, and that would be about 34% of the daily value. And then another, like a granola bar or anything, it's important to check those as well, because for instance, a Cliff Bar has 21 grams of added sugar and about 30 to 32% of your daily value. So as you can see, those can add up pretty quickly to exceed what you may expect as you're consuming those beverages and snacks. All right, so we have a little participation for you guys. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of putting into the chat what your thoughts are on if sugar causes hyperactivity in children. If you would just put if you think that's a fact or if you think that's a myth. I'll wait just a second to see kind of what those responses are. All right, and then what are your thoughts about sugar addiction? Can a person be addicted to sugar? Okay, great. So both of those are actually myths. There is no scientific research at this time that supports either of those. So, as far as sugar causing hyperactivity in children, the New England Journal of Medicine did a project where they took children who were identified by their parents as being hyperactive after consuming sugar, and they split them into three different groups where the children and the families would consume sugar equal, which is a nutritive sweetener. We'll get into that later, or sweet and low. And so they would incorporate these in the meals. So there would be one group that was consuming sugar in their meal for 3 weeks, and then the other one would be consuming sweet and low in their meal for 3 weeks, and then equal in the other group for 3 weeks. Each of those went through a washout period before they went to the next study of switching up that sugar. And what they did is they had the teachers and the parents monitoring the children's behaviors to see if there was an increase, decrease, equal amount of hyperactivity. And they found that there was no significance to that, whether the children were consuming a diet higher in just regular sugar versus the other two. So what has been indicated by that is that it is more of the environment of that which we give those sugary sweets to children. So if you think about it, when you were growing up, you may go to your friend's birthday party and they had soda and they had Kool-Aid and they had cake and ice cream and all of these fun, exciting goodies. And it wasn't necessarily the sugar that was causing that excitement and overwhelming hyperactivity in the children as much as just the enjoyment of being around their friends and getting to do something that they may not usually get to do. Secondly, we have sugar addiction. And so the research on that looks into what an addiction is. And so to be able to define something as or to be able to define someone as having an addiction to a substance, they have to meet 3 of these 7 criteria. So they have to have an increased tolerance for the substance. They would have to have withdrawal effects, and they would be taking more of the substance in. They would need to be taking that substance for longer than they intend to. They would have a persistent desire or inability to control consumption. Much of their time would be spent seeking, consuming, or recovering from the consumption of that substance. Or they would continue to use that despite adverse consequences. So you have to meet 3 of those 7 in order to be defined as having an addiction to something. And the research currently doesn't support that in human studies. And whenever we looked into rat studies as well, there were rats who were fed a high sugar diet. And what they found was rather than the rats being addicted to sugar, they were showing patterns of binge eating. And then those patterns of binge eating increased sugar cravings and then led to more intake just through the patterns. So now we're going to move on to sweeteners.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alexa, and I am going to be transitioning into talking about sweeteners with you all. So sweeteners are used to enhance the flavor and the texture of our food. There are actually 2 different categories of sweeteners. We have nutritive and non-nutritive, and non-nutritive are more commonly known as artificial sweeteners. So nutritive sweeteners, these provide calories and contribute to the added sugar that Emily showed us on the food label. Examples of these are honey, high fructose corn syrup, table sugar, and sugar in the raw. And then we have our non-nutritive or artificial. For the rest of the presentation, we mainly refer to them as artificial. These provide little to no calories at all. So in your diet sodas and stuff, they don't appear under your added sugar on the label. And they tend to be hundreds of times sweeter than sugar itself, which is another reason that people opt for these instead of actual sugar. There are some examples, and we will go through these, but a couple are aspartame, Splenda, and stevia, which are pretty well known. And some manufacturers actually label artificial sweeteners as natural, and some of these do come from natural sources, like stevia comes from the stevia plant, but it is extracted from the plant and processed and refined in a way that is no longer natural. So they become the sweeteners that we know through that process. Next, I'm going to talk to you guys about high fructose corn syrup. So that is one of the nutritive sweeteners. So it does have calories. High fructose corn syrup is a liquid sweetener, and it is used in a lot of foods and beverages, as you guys have probably seen in things that you find at the store. I know I see it in bread a lot. It comes from corn, and it is relatively inexpensive to produce high fructose corn syrup due to low cost of production of corn and corn syrup from the corn. It's also, it increases the shelf life of foods and beverages, which is why a lot of people put it in things like bread, because it tends to help it last a little longer than it would without. With anything, moderation is key with high fructose corn syrup. It is in a lot of products that we consume and in high amounts. So just being mindful of how much we are consuming and what products we choose that have high fructose corn syrup in it may decrease our risk of negative health outcomes. Now we'll dive into the artificial sweeteners. There are 7 that are approved by the FDA. Anything outside of these 7 that you see are probably not approved by the FDA. So we have these 4, the first 4, these are commonly known, things you see in the store a lot, or we traditionally see the pink, yellow, and blue in the little packets on tables at restaurants. So first we have saccharin, or commonly known as sweet and low. This is 200 to 700 times sweeter than sugar, and it is the most popular artificial sweetener in the world. It is approved in over 100 countries. And then we have aspartame. This is commonly seen in the blue packets, Equal or NutraSweet. And this one is 200 times sweeter than sugar. And it accounts for 75% of all aspartame use in this form is found in our soft drinks, which I thought was a very significant amount. Then third, we have stevia, which I kind of talked about, is extracted from that plant. We have stevia in the raw, Truvia, and Purevia. These are all different forms that you can find at the store that are popular. This one is 250 times sweeter than sugar. And any form of stevia that does not say Reb A on it is actually not generally recognized as safe because Reb A is the only enzyme from the stevia plant that has been researched. So any other one probably hasn't been researched and is not generally recognized as safe. Fourth, we have Splenda or sucralose. This one is 600 times sweeter than sugar, and it is used in a lot of beverages and desserts. This one is actually heat stable, so it can be used in cooking and baking. Next, we have the last 3 FDA-approved artificial sweeteners. These ones you probably may not have heard of. These are a lot lesser known and less used also. So we have monk fruit. It is 150 to 300 times sweeter than sugar. It appears on your labels usually as monk fruit extract. These are just some that I found on the internet. Some different ones I found that if you didn't see it on a label, this is what it would look like. And then we have neotame or nutame. This one is 7,000 to 13,000 times sweeter than sugar. So it is the sweetest one of them all. This one is rarely used anymore, actually, probably due to just how sweet it is. And it is also heat stable, kind of like Splenda. So the most use was in those baked goods like cookies seen here. And then our last but not least is acesulfame K, also known as ACE K. This one is 200 times sweeter than sugar, and it contains potassium represented by the K, but 95% of this potassium isn't being absorbed by our body. It's actually just excreted in our urine. This one is found in soft drinks, sodas, frozen desserts, candies, and gum. Next, I have some labels for you guys. So we have a sugar-free and a diet label. Why I am choosing these is that there are a lot of products that are marketed with these as a selling point, and artificial sweeteners are often responsible for the sweet taste in these foods or drinks because there is no sugar. They're sugar-free. So these artificial sweeteners also can increase our feelings of hunger. So if you're consuming these and you're finding that you're not full for as long or it just doesn't satisfy your craving, then that is attributed to the artificial sweetener. So here we show a sugar-free Smucker's strawberry preserves, so jam, and then we have a Diet Coke, a really, really common diet soda. So when we flip this over and look at the label, we see that there are 0 total sugars, which I have highlighted on both sides, and then 0 grams of added sugar on both of these. So going back to the label that Emily showed you, this one shows that there's no sugar in either of these products. And we would think this is good, right? Because it should be sugar-free if it's advertised or marketed this way. But if we look further down and investigate a little bit deeper, we find that in the ingredients, there are these non-nutritive sweeteners present. So we have the artificial sweetener sucralose or Splenda found in the jam, the Smucker's strawberry preserves. And then in the Diet Coke, there is aspartame. So I just wanted to point out that just so you know how to identify that these are present, you're going to have to look in the ingredients. And it's not that these are meant to scare you, just to be mindful that even if it says 0 sugar, 0 added sugar, if it's sweet, there's probably an artificial sweetener present.
Hi, I'm Jaisa, and I'm here to talk about what to do with all that information. So back to what Emily talked about a little bit earlier with added sugar. The dietary guidelines, they recommend no more than about 10% of your total calories come from added sugars. The American Heart Association, it splits it up into two groups. So we'll have women that recommends no more than 25 grams a day, and men no more than 37 and a half grams a day. And myself and a lot of people find it a little bit easier to go by that guideline, since on your nutrition labels, you can see the grams in that particular item and kind of keep track and add them up throughout the day to kind of see what you're intaking. One of the quotes from the American Heart Association that was really important to share with you guys is that diets high in added sugars are linked to risk factors for cardiovascular disease, including obesity, dyslipidemia, elevated blood pressure, and chronic inflammation. So when we're talking artificial sweeteners, they have what's called an ADI, or an acceptable daily intake. And a definition of an ADI is basically the max amount of a substance that you can have in a day for the rest of your life without seeing any adverse effects. And so a little background of how they come up with that number. They'll give, usually mice, they'll give them a set amount of whatever the substance is and keep increasing it day by day until they see effects happen in the mouse. And then they'll take that number, jot that number down, and it's usually about 100 times less for humans or animals. And so just a little visual here of what I just talked about. So if they give a mouse 1 milligram of the substance or artificial sweeteners, they gave a mouse 2 milligrams of artificial sweeteners. And then when they gave the mouse 3 milligrams of artificial sweeteners, it turned orange. So we can kind of deduce here that it's 2 milligrams that's pretty much safe in mice. And so we'll go 100 times below that and have an ADI of 0.02 milligrams for humans. I know that artificial sweeteners can sometimes get a bad rep, but we usually see that whenever a person is exceeding the ADI for that particular substance. So I wanted to kind of do a short activity here and have you guys take a guess for a 150-pound person, how much Splenda do you think that you'll need to reach the ADI? If you want to just go ahead and put that in the chat. Yeah, how many packets do you think you'll need to reach the ADI for Splenda? Okay. So it was the wrong. Okay, so so anyway, for Splenda, it's 23 packets. For Sweet and Low, it goes up to about 45 packets. And then for Equal, it is 75 packets a day to reach the ADI. So it's safe to say that if you're using 2 in your morning coffee, it's probably fine. So some key takeaways that we wanted to get out of the presentation, or have you guys get out of the presentation, is that added sugars can be found in many, many different foods, with the bulk of it coming from your sugar sweetened beverages like your sodas, your pops, your Gatorades, and pumpkin spice lattes from Starbucks. Nutritive sweeteners. So we have nutritive sweeteners and non-nutritive sweeteners. Your nutritive sweeteners are going to be food derived. So they're going to be from things like honey, agave, syrup, high fructose corn syrup. The non-nutritive sweeteners are artificially made. So your Sweet and Lows, your Equal, your stevias. The key thing here is that sugars and sweeteners are not a bad thing. They're the backbone, like I said, of any good Starbucks drink. The important thing here is to make sure that you're monitoring your intake and know how to identify whenever you are consuming sugars in different foods. And that's what's more important here. And so we will open up the floor to any questions that you may have if you want to put them in the chat.
Yeah, real quick, it sounds like I have a question. I am looking at my artificial sweetener and its brand is Hayur. Not familiar with that one. And the label says that it's an organic stevia blend, USDA organic, contain Reb A. Is this okay since it's not the exact brand mentioned before? Probably not, but I'm confusing myself. Oh, hey, and that's the thing here. I think that's pretty common when it comes to just nutrition and distinguishing between sugars, artificial sweeteners, and we put the labels of good and bad and the ugly, and really it's just trying to navigate through all of that, which I think that's one of the main things these ladies here today have helped show us, that yes, look at the nutrition labels, look a little further into the ingredients list, and how it's always good to just continuously ask questions and work with a registered dietitian, which these ladies are working towards. So what do you have for us?
So I can answer that question, Erica. So from Reb A is what you want. The stevia that are from Reb A, that is the only generally recognized as safe substance that is the enzyme that is extracted from the stevia plant, Reb A. That is the safe one. So green light with your pure, or however you say that. And then yes, Pamela, stevia is derived from a plant. They actually take enzymes from the leaves, the Reb A enzyme from the stevia leaves, and then they process that. So it is from a plant, it's from a natural source, but because it's processed and refined, it doesn't necessarily make the actual sweetener natural. And then we have a question. Any idea how many packets of equal or aspartame is in a 20-ounce bottle of Diet Pepsi? What was your? Yeah, I think we would have to look that one up. Emily, did you have a?
I don't know.
Did you have a?
Equal or aspartame? And no, I just looked at straight up added sugars because that would be.
No, but didn't you mention a pop earlier?
Yeah, Coke has 39 grams.
Okay, so
But
Coke
that's
has
not- that's just regular added
regular.
sugar, high
Okay,
fructose
yeah,
corn
we would have to
syrup.
look on that one, Kim, and get back to you. Clayton asks, you said there is no evidence that sugar is addictive. Do you guys personally believe that to be true? You guys want to
That's not an opinion question, so
go for it?
I think that it isn't true. Just because, like we were talking about a little bit, it's more associated with binge eating behaviors. And so if you're eating something to escape from something else, or there's a psychological component to it, I just don't think that there's enough evidence to say that it is addictive, as much as it's just something maybe that you're using as a way to kind of escape that, give yourself some normalcy. So no, I don't think it's addictive based on the literature that we've been presented with in our classes.
Yeah, I don't believe that it's addictive either. I believe that a lot of the times it's associated, well, sugar is associated with the addiction, because whenever you typically binge eat, it's usually sweetened foods like cakes and cookies and things like that. So it can sometimes get lumped together.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the patterns that make it seem like it's an
Right.
addiction, but because it doesn't fit the exact criteria or the definition of addiction, yeah, it's not technically,
Yeah.
but it does follow kind of those binge eating patterns. So I understand, but that's kind of where we
So
sit
when you
on that.
binge eat, you're not binge eating on broccoli.
Yeah.
It's usually something like that. So it's associated together.
And then also with the fact that it doesn't help that artificial sweeteners and stuff like that increase your appetite. So because they increase your appetite, you might then turn for more sweetened food, more artificial sweetened food. Sounds good to you and you want more of it. And then in turn, you're hungrier. And then LaDonna, Reb A. So I don't remember how to pronounce what Reb stands for, but it is an enzyme in the stevia plant. So if you Google Reb A stevia, it'll pop up that enzyme for you. And typically it is on the front of the label. It should say with Reb A, the stevia with Reb A.
It's RGB.
REB, yes, Reb A. Then we have sugar is also processed, right? Yes, Pamela, sugar is processed.
Natural sugar.
If we're talking about,
Table
if we're talking about
sugar.
sucrose, table sugar is processed. Natural sugar that occurs in fruit, for example, is not processed. So the natural occurring sugars do not count toward your ADI of added sugar. Correct. Correct. Because added sugars have to be what is not already present in the food. So, for example, if we had mandarin oranges, for example, that come in that little packet with juice, the mandarin oranges already have some naturally occurring sugar. And then when you put them in that juice, that has added sugar. So what's in that juice will be counted as added sugar, but the sugar already in the orange not counted as added sugar. Right. Where are we at now? Yeah. No, yeah, but not. Okay, Clayton asks, alcohol is used in escape and is considered addictive. Yes, it is. However, one, we are not taught to address alcoholism as dietitians. We just address behaviors involving more like food and those types of patterns.
Yeah,
That would be outside of
the
our scope of practice. And then the sugar, because there are so many different terms tied to sugar, like emotional eating and binge eating, they focus on those instead of more inflammatory language, like addictive.
Oh, we're getting deep conversation.
Yes, we are. Thank you. I appreciate. And yeah,
Thank
see,
you.
Barton saying there is psychological addiction and physical addiction. Yes, there is. I love this is a very stimulating conversation you guys are having in the chat. Beyond the scope. Thank you.
Thanks.
We are still students. So we're first year students.
Yeah,
So we are
first
still
year.
learning. We can't answer all of your questions, no matter how fantastic they are. Let's see.
I think you ladies have really covered a lot here. Great questions. Yes, unfortunately right now, some of a little bit out of the scope and we got a little deeper, but that's great. You guys really are the wheels are spinning and really thinking about a lot of stuff here. So again, I think that's why, it's important to address how working with a registered dietitian is, very important, that they can go deeper into a lot of the things that you guys are asking about, and that it can be very difficult to navigate through, nutrition just in general by yourselves. So it's good to go out and find those registered dietitians, how important they are. I know one for sure on the Norman campus, Fran Olson Sharp out of Food Services. She always does a fantastic job of just being open and willing to be used as a resource for you all as employees at the university. Really, no matter what campus you are. Yes, she's supposed to be primarily Norman campus, but she's absolutely great to work with and open and willing to work with all of our employees and students. So that's absolutely great to hear. Like I said, we'll have a follow-up email to get out to you all with any additional resources the ladies have to share. The recording and resources for registered dietitians and that sort of things that you guys can utilize. Looks like here that they also have, you guys have a QR code too to take the post quiz.
Yes. So if you guys could try this QR code again for us, this is just going to be a quick post quiz just to see if you guys were able to get anything out of our discussion today. And then also we did see that Lauren had a question for us and we're going to type back and respond to you guys. That way, if you need to go, you can go. But also, again, if you guys would just please quickly take that post quiz for us. Thank you so much for your time today. And hopefully we will see you guys around at another one. Is there like a pause?